All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Michael Clark, host of the CCA's Leadership Development Podcast. I'm on with my guests today, Craig Chu and Jonah von der Embse, current volunteers with the Sexuality and Gender Alliance for Actuaries. Guys, in this segment, I do want to talk more about SAGAA, just for people that aren't familiar with SAGAA. Can you give a little history on the organization and what it's aiming to accomplish? Craig, maybe let me start with you.
Sure. I just joined the board in January. It's been really great as I bring myself up to speed with all, excuse me, with all of the work that SAGAA is doing. SAGAA really seeks to improve the visibility and the opportunities for LGBTQ aligned actuaries, as well as a host of other activities that can contribute to the professional development of the profession and for the profession to have a stronger alignment towards friendliness towards the LGBTQ umbrella. To that, I might actually turn to Jonah a bit, because I think his work with the RAC, which he can talk about, is actually really, really important and really high up there towards that mission.
Yeah, so of course. So I think that SAGAA is definitely doing a lot of really great things. I think that we are doing a great job of really improving university engagement, trying to spur a lot of people from the LGBTQ plus community to consider careers in actuarial science. I think that we're doing a lot of great work with companies as well. But one thing that I'm definitely really proud of to get into motion a lot more is our Regulatory and Advocacy Committee. And that is going to be an organization that, a branch of our organization that wants to try to tackle some really tougher issues across the insurance space of different things that pertain directly or impact the LGBTQ plus community directly or indirectly, from either practices by insurance companies or laws or regulations that are on the books, or potentially marketing practices, anything along those lines. And we want to be that liaison almost that works with companies, interested parties, regulators to try to help out the LGBTQ plus community where we can. We're doing this in a handful of different ways. We have already initiated some from an educational standpoint. We actually, as an organization, put on a webinar for the Society of Actuaries that had over 2,000 people tune in to listen to our presentation there. And we're trying to take and create even more of this educational material about some of these really hot button topics and how companies could potentially address them. And in the future, we do want to address some different either laws, regulations, and anything along those lines, to really help out the community where we can.
So Jonah, with what you're saying, let me make sure that I'm understanding it right. SAGAA as an organization is more than just what Craig had I think articulated so well about trying to help LGBTQ umbrella actuaries or students that might become actuaries, help them in their professional life. But what you're talking about here is even going a step further and saying, no, there are LGBTQ issues holistically that affect people that insurance companies should be aware of. This is where we start talking about bias in data and various things, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
That's exactly what I'm getting at. So at the end of the day, I find a lot of insurance products, it's a part of society with where we have to buy and access insurance products. And that is both, even actuaries ourselves are people, consumers of insurance products. And I think that it's a matter of certain things can always be, I find, improved upon with respect to different communities. At the end of the day, I think that it's very, very difficult for actuaries to say what can and cannot be used in, say, risk classification or things such as that. And I think that it's hard to change our ways in a lot of sense. I think that one thing that I always will talk about is HIV, AIDS, and some of the mortality rates around that. I think that we've had a rather checkered past as an industry without how the industry approached the AIDS epidemic really going on in the 1980s. And there is a lot of remnants of that still today, where as actuaries, say we're doing something with mortality predictions, what we do is use historical data to predict whatever the future is. But with something like AIDS, there has been more than, I think, an 80 to 90% reduction in mortality rates, especially more than 50% reduction in just the last 10 years. And it's very, very common that individuals who contract AIDS will have a similar life expectancy to people without AIDS, as long as they're keeping some of their antibody counts low. And yet that's not necessarily would always be reflected in, say, some different companies' pricing practices, because they're saying, look at our historical data that says this is a high-risk individual. So things like that, that are things that don't necessarily only impact, I should say, the LGBTQ plus community, but disproportionately do impact, are different things where I think that there is a cross-section for SAGAA to be involved with and try to change some of the narrative and discussion on.
Interesting. Now, I mean, is this still in its infancy within SAGAA and what you're trying to do, or have you already had some discussions and potential wins that that you could share?
I cannot necessarily share everything at the moment, I would say. I will say that we're hoping to be having some in the future. We are in discussion, I would say, with different bodies and entities on different items. And again, hopefully more to come. It is still an infancy organization. I will definitely say, I will for sure give this disclaimer where it's like, this is my own professional opinion. There's no direct reflection of my employer whatsoever. It's my own professional work here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
But there is definitely more to come, I would say. Yeah, potentially a little early right now, but I'm very, very hopeful with some of the things that we are discussing and talking about, and will hopefully be able to accomplish in the future.
No, that's excellent. I think that gives people some things to look out for and watch for with what SAGAA is doing, which is interesting, fascinating. I mean, just what you've laid out there, Jonah. I think there's things that I think a lot will resonate with a lot of people, and it's nice to see that SAGAA as an organization is trying to lead on that front to change what happens within the insurance industry.
Yeah, and Michael, if I can piggyback on that, it goes hand in hand, and I think it's another facet of the same coin that the Academy has begun requiring CPE in bias and bias topics, right? Because bias is not just personal prejudices. Bias is also biased. It can be being aware of biased data. When data is based on historical information, some of the things underlying that data may not be good predictors of future experience. And it's really interesting to be at the forefront of that, I think.
No, I think for a lot of people that's very useful context, as the Academy did introduce that bias requirement a year or two ago, and people might be scratching their heads saying, well, why do we have to do this? But it's for the exact issues that you guys are raising here, which I think is very helpful for people to know and understand. It makes that bias credit come to life a little bit more. Craig, let me ask you this: beyond the stuff that Jonah and his group are doing on the regulatory and advocacy side, what other types of programs or events is SAGAA currently involved with?
Yeah, one of the really big lifts that SAGAA does every year is actually run a scholarship program for college students. We are still fine-tuning the application and a lot of the details, so I can't really jump into a giant blurb right now in terms of that. But it's really nice to be able to offer an opportunity for people in that LGBTQ plus umbrella who are in college to not only have, visible actuaries along the spectrum, but to have a really concrete opportunity, particularly the ones who might not have, the socioeconomic background to pay for exams, to do all of these other things, because there are some barriers to entry to the profession.
And then beyond that too, I mean, I think I've seen, I follow the SAGAA LinkedIn page and try to get updates. You guys occasionally will do webinars or group discussions on various topics. Can you talk a little bit about that, just for people that might be interested?
Yeah, we'd love to collaborate with the other organizations as well to talk about the information that we have. We also, among our sponsors, do offer to have a presentation to our sponsoring organizations If they, whether it be HR or whether it be actuaries or anybody internally wants to hear more about LGBTQ issues, I personally have wondered, I'm trying to think of the right verbs to use here. It's both great and a mixed blessing that sometimes I feel like people along the LGBTQ advocacy line sometimes feel like they have to give the same 101 presentation every time. What is gender diversity? What is non-binary? What is gay me? What is lesbian me? What is the difference between sex and gender? And it's a great thing that there's always an audience that wants to hear these things. By the same token, it is sort of the basics that we want to be sure people understand, because people, to Jonah's point earlier, rarely have malintentioned like diction or word choices or actions, but want to really, understand actually what there is to understand and what they need to know to have those fundamentals.
Oh, I like that. And Craig, let me ask another follow-up question on this. So you mentioned sponsorship. So what opportunities are out there for people that want to support what SAGAA is doing?
Well, at the corporate level, we absolutely have 3 different sponsorship levels. And our sponsors have been really, really great partners for us. Huge shout out to anybody listening who is among that group. On the individual level, we would love to have volunteers and board members. The RAC that Jonah is in charge of does a lot of work. There's a lot that goes on in sort of making sure the organization keeps functioning and things keep happening. And so we would love to have people involved. Just shoot us an email at info@sagaactuaries.org if anybody's interested in volunteering or helping out. We'd love to find something that people are able to help with.
Now, Craig, does somebody need to be part of the LGBTQ plus community to be volunteering with SAGAA?
Definitely not. We absolutely would love to have anybody who wants to be supportive.
Excellent. Jonah, before we move on from this topic, anything else that you want people to know about SAGAA as an organization that we haven't covered?
Yeah, I mean, I will just add that we are still a younger organization, that our goal is always to be growing and changing. So a lot of things that we do now are not necessarily going to always be set in stone. We want to grow and change just as the LGBTQ plus community has grown and changed over time. So as Craig mentioned, we definitely will take all sorts of volunteers from different people with thoughts, ideas, and where we can take things. And also to the fact of, I would just say that open call for volunteers is really a big thing for us.
And where does somebody need to go if they're interested in finding out more information about SAGAA?
I would repeat again with what Craig said, for the info@sagaactuaries.com or .org.
Right. Perfect. All right. No, this has been very insightful in learning a little bit more about what SAGAA is doing beyond just the supporting of LGBTQ plus actuaries or students, but also what you're trying to affect on the industry side of things, which I think is fascinating. So more to come, and it'll be exciting to watch the developments with what you guys are working on. I appreciate that.